Hello and welcome to another video in the Blade series. Today, Scott and I will be diving into some of the most common terms you'll encounter in the world of cybersecurity. Whether you're a beginner or just need a refresher, this video will help you understand the key concepts that are essential for protecting your digital life. So, Scott, I suppose the first thing we should talk about is why understanding the common cybersecurity terms is important.
Sure. Well, you know, we have a specific vocabulary in our field.
That's a mild understatement.
Exactly. And cybersecurity really, you know, is not just for business owners or other people. Really, it's for everybody now. Anyone who owns a smart device should have at least an understanding of what cybersecurity is. And so you're right, you know, understanding these terms, it's really essential for you to protect yourself and your organization from cyber threats. It helps you recognize potential risks and take the appropriate measures to safeguard your digital life. And the more you know, as in every topic in the world really, the more you know about threats in the wild, the better chance you have to avoid them. So having a basic understanding of these terms can help you navigate this jungle of cybersecurity. And if you're a business owner or an IT pro or these type of people, you know, it'll help you understand recommendations maybe you're getting from consultants and have it make sense instead of just having a whole bunch of gobbledygook on a piece of paper with a big dollar sign at the bottom. Right?
Nice. So now it's LeVar Burton, the more you know.
The more you know.
There you go. All right. Okay, so now that we understand why it's important to know what these terms mean, let's dive in and review a few of the most common terms. And the first question I have is, what is authentication in cybersecurity?
Sure, authentication, and you know, really it's kind of your entryway into that cybersecurity world in a way. You know, this is how you're going to interact. You're going to authenticate, and what it is, it's the process of verifying your identity to as a user to a device. So it's kind of like your identity card. Authentication is a lot of times the most common way you see it is a username and password, and then you type in your username and password. That works. Also, PINs are a way to authenticate. Any sort of biometrics. You know, the fingerprint, retina scans, facial recognition, these sort of things are all ways that you can authenticate as well. You know, we also talk about two-factor authentication too, and that's where you take, you know, two different factors to combine them together. And so really, if you're not doing that today, you probably need to, especially on your important accounts like your bank, credit card, and so on and so forth. But basically, what it is, you take something you know, like a password, something you have, like a dongle maybe, or your phone that will give you another code, and then something you are, like a fingerprint or a retina scan. Pick two of those and put them together. You've got really, really good security for the standard user out there. So, and in fact, authentication was in the news this week. I know we talked about this. Google's open authorization, OAuth it's called, and you probably see that as an end user. You'll see when you go to a new website you've never been before, and it offers you to either create an account at the website or log in with Google or Facebook or Microsoft.
It's the easy button.
It's the easy button, right? And that's what open authorization means. And the problem that Google had was that there's a way that you could use that, and let's say that your domain you currently have on your email, like bladetechinc.com for us, let's say that domain goes away for some reason. Well, a third party could buy that domain and then reroute all those old messages back to them, and they could get access into other accounts that were used the third-party OAuth stuff. So a little confusing, but I think everyone's seen the login to Google. So that's why we always recommend don't use these types of login methods, you know, where you log in, you know, with Google's account or Microsoft's or Facebook. You're always going to be better off creating a unique account with a unique password for that site. And obviously, to keep track of these things, you need a password manager. So if you don't have a password manager, it's something you got to have, even if it's just a notebook. Not recommended. There's cheap or free options in the digital world to work on smartphones and everything else. But you know, that's something about authentication. A password manager and authentication kind of go hand in hand nowadays. So if you don't have one of those, check it out. PC Mag's got a list of them all the time and gives you the features. Talk to your friends and coworkers and see what they use. But everyone really needs to use one of those nowadays to make sure that your authorization remains secure.
And not shared with everybody.
Exactly. And not shared with Google or Facebook or Microsoft, because, you know.
It's inevitable.
Yeah.
It's Thanos.
Yeah, it's going to happen. There will be a data breach. It's just going to happen. It's the nature of business, you know. Anyhow.
So moving down the line, so the next thing that I put on the list is, what is a botnet?
A botnet. And a botnet is basically comes from robot network, right? And a botnet, what it is, it's a network of infected devices. And what the bad guys like to do is if they could breach a network, get into somebody's network, sometimes they don't do anything really obvious like ransomware, we'll talk about in a bit, or shutting down machines. They're just sitting in the background, okay? And this is how these botnets are formed. This software gets on all these machines and it just sits there until it gets a command from Command and Control Center saying, everybody go hit CNN.com. So that's where you get something called a DDoS attack, or which I think we're going to talk about in a second, a distributed denial of service. So what happens is, let's say you have millions of machines on the botnet, and you say, okay, everybody go to CNN right now. What do you think is going to happen? It's going to overwhelm the CNN servers, make them go down or unavailable. Nobody can get to CNN. A lot of people say, well, it took down their site or blew up. It usually doesn't really take it down. There's just not enough resources to make all the connections it's trying to do. So that's what one use of a botnet is. You can do other things with botnets, like make them go work on your cryptocurrency mining. You could have a botnet on a network, and we've seen this happen before, where there was a botnet on a network that was sitting there mining away, and everybody went home at night. It would just be quiet. The botnet wouldn't say anything, but when everyone went home that night, it would kick into high gear, and all the machines were running at 100% because they're trying to mine cryptocurrency. And gosh knows how long that was going on before somebody actually found it. That's a good one. So, and it's not unusual to see multiple botnets working together in attacks or other types of things. And they can work together in attack. They can work in concert where one botnet does one part of the attack and another botnet does another one, which makes sense because then they're separated. It's hard you'll be working hard to stop one of them and then another one comes in. These sort of things. So that's what a botnet is. It's basically a large network of compromised computers or other systems that can be used to do bad things.
Gotcha. So we are the botnet.
Exactly. Robot network.
Yeah, there you go. Got it. So the next one on the list is, what is a data breach?
Yeah. Data breach. Well, that's the one that makes all the IT pros kind of clinch up when you start.
I don't even like saying the term.
No, that's when data is accessed, sensitive information is accessed without authorization. So hackers come in, hack a server, grab the documents, that kind of things, and you can lose personal information, financial loss of your reputation and stuff. And depending on your organization, for example, if you are in the let's say the legal industry and you do a lot of work with medical malpractice, you have medical records. So if that gets breached, that's a big deal. That's a reportable event that you have to report. You have to send letters to all your clients and patients and so on. There's fines in the millions of dollars and so on. And in fact, John, it's getting worse because HIPAA, in the HIPAA world, the healthcare world, there's a new set of security regulations that are right now in conversation. They're going to be launched in March. So it's going to really make the medical industry more secure if everybody follows the rules.
Oh boy. It never fails. We had HIPAA, then we have high tech, and now we've got the new version, which hopefully will put enough teeth on it where people will pay attention.
Yeah, it doesn't even have. It's just got a revision number right now. I don't know what they're going to call it in the end, but you're right. There's been a series of 4 regulations since 1986 around HIPAA, and now with high tech was the good one for us because they actually started realizing, hey, these guys might have computers here, so let's start talking about securing those. But this one takes it to the next step, and I've read it a few times now, and if everyone follows the rules, it'll be a really good thing for all of us.
That's awesome. So you already alluded to the next one. So what is a DDoS attack?
A DDoS attack, a distributed denial of service. Denial of service, stopping something from working. So this would be the example, as we said, where millions of computers decide to all go to wikipedia.org or whatever, and it takes those systems down. And a lot of sites like that, Wikipedia not as much, but like archive.org that I know we use to do research and find stuff, that's only run by a handful of people. And they were brought down recently a couple of times, ransomware and so on, because they really don't have the resources. So, that's the kind of thing, other people need to look out for. And this is more of a, backroom IT issue to avoid this kind of stuff. But, DDoS attacks have been around long enough now that you really shouldn't, unless you're being targeted by millions and millions of them, you shouldn't take down your website or your mail servers or something like that. But basically, that's how it works. It's like a lot of people trying to all get out of a theater all at once, and trying to cram out the doors, and that's how they causes the systems to go down. So
yeah, that was the example I was going to use. Was you're standing in front of Disney World, and instead of a couple hundred people, you send 1 million people.
Yeah, and everybody tries to get through this turnstiles.
And everybody tries to get through the turnstiles all at once.
And the whole system collapses.
Yeah, and then everybody has a freak out.
That's a great example. Yeah,
there's not enough managers for all those people. So, all right. So the next one is endpoint hardening.
Endpoint hardening. Endpoints are a term of art for us, and that basically just means anything that's attached to a network that's not a server, essentially. Your mobile devices, laptops, computers, so on and so forth. Endpoints. So endpoint hardening means securing those individual devices like computers, smartphones, tablets, those sort of things, and prevent them from being easily attacked by cyber threats. And we use antivirus software, firewalls, security patches, all these sort of things to harden them. But the important thing to note, it's not a one-time thing. It's an ongoing process. It never ends.
Right.
You're always hardening, and there's always new problems. There's always new software updates and definitions and so on that need to be processed in there to harden up these endpoints so they're not going to be as vulnerable. And nowadays, really, most of the cyber attacks that we see, they don't go after the servers as much anymore. They want to go to the soft underbelly and get to those endpoints and then work their way back through the network to get to the servers.
Right.
So that's something we're seeing more and more. So that's what we mean by endpoint hardening. We're just trying to make our systems more secure.
Yeah, and it's kind of funny, like. I always think of endpoint stuff like this type of stuff. Like when is one of these going to be a
it has a lot of capabilities.
Target.
Well, that's what happens as our systems get more and more functionality and power. It makes them a better weapon to be used by the bad guys.
Yep.
It's part of just the way it works. So
yeah. The next one, and boy, do we get a lot of these.
Yeah.
All right. What is phishing?
Phishing. Well, phishing is one of my more favorite areas of study. There's all kinds of different types to phish somebody. You can voice phish somebody. That's vishing, where you get on a phone and try to talk them into giving up your passwords and stuff. And believe it or not, that's pretty easy sometimes, shockingly. But phishing is basically whenever attackers trick you into giving up sensitive information by pretending to be someone else. It's a con. That's all it is. It's just a con. So they're the con man. They're trying to fool you into, through deceptive emails, maybe calls and texts and all kinds of different things. They're trying to trick you into giving up this important information. Now, that might not be your password or username. They may be looking at, hey, who's your boss and what's their, email address.
Right.
To try to work their way up the chain of command to get to somebody that can sign checks. Because let's face it, these guys are just criminals, they're thieves. So they want the money. And so they're trying to work their way up the track and so on. But there's all kinds of, good training out there on phishing. They're getting good enough now that, I get fooled, not fooled. I go, is that phishing
It gives
or not?
us pause.
Yeah. So even for us, when we see these things, as John mentioned, dozens of times a day, if not more. I got one today I never saw before. It actually had an attached PDF that had a QR code that said, scan this code with your smartphone, and it will play the voice message I left for you. Okay, so I have a special system that I can move stuff over. It's called a detonation chamber. So if something goes horribly bad, this system, it doesn't matter. I can just hit a button, it resets itself, we're done. So I said, well, let's see what happens. So I throw it over there. Well, in this case, they must have already taken down the URL that was malicious, but it was definitely a malicious URL. So if I would have scanned that code with my phone, something would have happened, and wouldn't have been good. Maybe my phone, the endpoint hardening of my phone, maybe it would stop it. Don't know. Wasn't going to test it, and that sort of thing. So yeah, we see that all the time. So that's a different type of phishing because it was really well written. It had the company logo on it, and everything. It looked really good. So, but that was actually an example of the attacker wasn't using their own email addresses. They had compromised a totally different company out in Las Vegas,
and we're using
theirs to come back and attack me with. So yeah, it was good. So you got to watch out for the phishing. Yeah, that's something, if you're going to get in trouble, that is the most likely vector. If you're not sure if it's real or not, then don't click on the link, don't answer the phone call, don't give anybody a credit card number.
Yeah, never, ever, ever give your password to anybody.
Ever, 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 ever.
So, all right. So the next one it's funny because it goes directly with that one. So once they phish you, what is ransomware?
Yeah, that's phishing is used a lot of times to initiate a ransomware attack. And so what that is, it's a piece of software that's malicious, and it gets on your systems, your servers and workstations, notebooks, whatever, and it encrypts all your data. So it goes through all your system, and it takes every one of your files and it puts a password on them. Essentially, it encrypts them, and it's strong encryption. It's not something we can break. Well, we probably could if we're given like 10,000 years or so. We could probably break it then, but you're not going to be able to just guess the password on the stuff. So that's when they have you. So if you want your access back, you have to pay a ransom. This is why it's called ransomware. So I've worked several ransomware events, and they're always a very tense situation because machines are being encrypted and so on and so forth. And a lot of times we want to negotiate with the ransomers. The last one I talked to was young guy down in Brazil.
You said he was one of the nicest guys you ever met.
He was a great guy. He basically told me all his methods, how he did it, why he did it, what he did for a living.
Because it's a business to them.
Yeah, because he wants return customers.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it is. You start thinking about it, it's crazy. But yeah, ransomware is something, and you have to remember the best way you can avoid not being a victim of ransomware is having current backups of all your data somewhere else. Not on the network, because they'll find it there, and they'll encrypt that too, but somewhere else, like get an external hard drive and keep it at home with all your important stuff, and that's the best way to stop. The second best way, or our best way part 2, would be to have hardened endpoints that have good antivirus and these sort of things. We would also recommend more, type of monitoring of behavior on the network, so we can see a lot of our clients where we can actually see these events coming before they actually occur, just through some statistics we pick up and see on the network and that kind of stuff. So that's a good way to do it too. But yeah, ransomware, probably about 2 or 3 years ago, John, that was the premier thing, right? You still see it, and people, because they got to be making money, or they wouldn't keep doing it, right? But yeah, it costs you pennies to send out 100,000 emails. Why not if you're a bad guy? Yeah. So I get it. Yeah. But ransomware, watch out for that. It's probably the most vicious thing that you could get involved with on your home machines or anything like that.
Yep. Start a crypto wallet now, just in case. So.
Exactly.
So all right, and so you mentioned one of the ways to combat ransomware, and so that's going to be our next term. What is a SIEM? A SIEM, SIEM, Security Information and Event Management System. So you can, by the name of it, you can kind of guess what it does. It looks at all these events that are accumulated by a network. Your network is, if you start looking at the different logs that it keeps on your servers and your workstations, you're talking about literally millions of records of auditing and systems and everything just accumulating all the time. Too much for one human being. That's why you have a SIEM. Because it'll take all that data, it'll feed into it, and it'll sort through all this stuff and then say, okay, these 99% are garbage, but these 1% a human need to look at. Yep.
And then that's what it kicks down to us, or depending, sometimes there's an off-site SOC, right? A security operations center. That's where these SIEMs live. So there might be an off-site SOC that takes the first cut at it, and maybe they'll eliminate another, 0.75%, and then we get the resultant 0.25% down to actually do something with.
Yeah.
Because there's so many, it's so subtle, and there's so many ways that these laws can be misleading at times, and that's why we're really leveraging, a SIEM and its intelligence to be able to sort out what's what. So, that's what it helps you detect, respond to threats, monitor your networks in real time, and these SIEMs are generally seen in SOCs, which are our security operations centers.
Awesome. So the next one is, I've done everything I can and it still didn't help.
Yeah.
So what is a 0-day vulnerability?
Yeah, these are the nasty ones, because what we mean by 0-day vulnerability is a security flaw that's unknown to the software author. So like Windows, for example, like Microsoft knows nothing about this vulnerability that's inside Windows, and there's probably hundreds or thousands of them that people just haven't discovered that are very esoteric. But if they find one that's valuable, a zero-day vulnerability, yeah, that means that Microsoft doesn't even know about it, so there's no patching. So you can't stop it. So, hackers can use these vulnerabilities to launch attacks before the vendor has a chance to even fix anything. And that's why you see a lot of times Microsoft will push down emergency patches. This is why. It's generally about 0 days. That's why they're sending a patch out just to patch that thing. Now, these are the types of vulnerabilities the bad guys love, because they can affect thousands or millions of systems, and there's not going to be stopped. So, it's a scary situation. Good thing it doesn't happen very often, but it does happen. And a lot of times the 0 days will only affect like a very specific subset of Windows machines, for example, that are in Korea that have a Logitech keyboard or something. Really, really specific things like that. But there have been some that come down that affected everybody. And, now today, we're even so more ingrained in the technology than we were, 5 years ago, for example. The next one that comes down the pipe could really cause a lot of problems. Just think about how bad just a bad update with some software took down, basically Delta Airlines a while back. So that's what can happen. So if you ever get if you're a Windows user or a Mac user or whatever, but you get an update alert that talks about the word 0 day in it somewhere, download and apply that immediately, because that's going to be your only protection.
Right, and a very real world example of this is going to be, so Windows 10 is going to go end of support, end of life. And what will happen is there may be a 0 day out there right now that one of these guys knows about that will affect millions and millions of systems, and they're going to sit on it until Microsoft decides they're not going to support Windows 10 anymore. And there's a bunch of people that don't want to go to Windows 11. And as soon as that stops, they're going to wait 6 months where Microsoft really doesn't care. And then they're going to launch this thing. And so that's why if you have a technical person, they're harping on you about moving to Windows 11 or to a supported OS, that 0 day vulnerability is one of the main reasons.
Right. And that's why we don't use Windows 7 or Windows XP anymore. Not because they were bad operating systems. They're deprecated now. They're no longer being supported.
They're Swiss cheese.
Yeah, they're no longer being supported. Even if they find a vulnerability, they're not going to fix it. And Microsoft, to their credit, are straight up about that. They tell us years in advance before these things are going to happen. So,
all right. Well, hopefully these explanations will help pull back the curtain of mystery that sometimes surrounds our industry. The more everyday folks can recognize these terms and what they truly mean, the more of a chance we have of fending off the flying monkeys. I mean bad guys. Scott, again, thanks for your expertise.
Always a pleasure.
Thanks to all of you for watching. This is John and Scott from Blade. Take it easy.